Hi, this is Astro Chris from CodaQueenAstrology, and in today's video, we're going to get into that Uranus, Mars, and North Node conjunction. I am also going to be touching base on the 18 and 22 degree using Nikola Stoyanovic's degree theory. So let's get to it. Now, let's start with the Uranus conjunction to the North Node. This conjunction is happening on July the 26th, and we're going to focus more on the expression of Uranus because this is the time when Uranus conjuncts the North Node. Now, I couldn't find when a similar conjunction happened with Mars, Uranus, and the North Node at the same time. I was able to locate an event that happened in 1855, and that was, I believe, May 10th, 1855. Mars, Uranus, the North Node were there, but in this chart that I found, it was only Mars conjuncting Uranus, and it was at 12 degrees in Taurus, and Uranus was actually at 16 degrees conjunct Mercury. So I couldn't find anything identical to this exact alignment. So it's quite unique and it's very radical. Anytime that Uranus is involved, it's all about expanding the mind, expanding consciousness, expanding the collective consciousness. Remember, Uranus rules Aquarius, which is the knowledge that is getting poured onto consciousness to the people so we can evolve, we can work together, we can be in community, and we're interconnected through our experiences and the collective itself. Like an example, there's something that unifies us during this time is that mostly everyone other than people that are or children that have been born since 2020 and on, but mostly all of us have one thing in common that we can say for certain, and is that we've been through the pandemic. So that is a collective experience. Now we all experienced it in different expressions and fashion, but it's still a collective experience that we cannot deny that we went through, right? So that is the interconnectivity that Uranus brings. It's not necessarily so, nice and bubbly and fluffy and energy that we can hug and be like, oh, this is just beautiful, because it's energy of detachment, but it's still connected no matter what. That's why it has rulership over technology, over science, and science uses a lot of theory, a lot of the processes when it comes to analyzing or creating theories or creating a new system or a new invention. You have to go through a hypothesis, right? And then you create a theory that then from there you can determine whether what it is that you're inventing or studying or researching has substance to become a fact or a law, etc. So when we look at the archetype of Uranus, it's just bringing in information that we need some sort of expansion as a collective during this time, as this conjunction is happening with a destiny point. And this is why it's so crazy and unique, because we have Uranus and Mars conjuncting on a 2-year basis. And then Uranus conjuncts the North Node every 18 years or so. And then Uranus goes back to the same degree point about 84 years. So as you can see, the cycles get longer and longer and longer, and there's cycles that we don't get to experience again. So this is an isolated conjunction that I don't believe we're going to experience for thousands of years. I went out and I was looking through combinations and I didn't find it. So either way, going back to that Uranus quality, when we think of Uranus and like the mad scientist energy that it brings, it's all about evolving humanity for a greater cause. This is why the energy of Uranus and Aquarius are influencing over communities and charities that are more focused on changing and helping the world. And I mean, I can't help but to think it's due to the mythology of Uranus and Earth, and Uranus making a promise that he would never hurt Earth again. And I think this is where that cycle of evolution is very felt strongly in the 3D, in the world, in the earth life, because Uranus expands intelligence, so it's expanding the earthlings, meaning the people or the animals, the people of earth, the animals of earth, the souls of earth, and even plants have souls, etc. It's evolving the life here, so earth can become a more sustainable and more beautiful place to live. Now, there's a lot of things that we've been doing that are not the greatest, and we have kind of stalled some of the forward momentum that we've made for many years and the technologies that we progressed, because some of the technologies that we've made have actually injured the earth more than assisted us. So there comes a price to everything that we create, and there is always a cause and effect, and we've known this through the scientific procedure, which again, it's ruled by the energy of Aquarius, Saturn, and Uranus. Now, in this chart, we have Uranus conjuncting the North Node at 18 degrees. We also have Mars very close at 14 degrees, and it's actually making a square to a Mercury at 14 degrees. This is also influencing our mind, because Mercury brings the logical mind into the picture, and Uranus is the higher mind. But then now we have the muscle, which is Mars. He brings that perspective of the equation, which is now creating momentum to take action. Now, there's some qualities that Mars expresses that are not the greatest expression of Mars, but then there's some qualities that are required. Remember, Mars is the leader of the zodiac. He starts the zodiac belt, and without his determination and passion and perseverance to start new things, we would be stuck in old places. So Mars does take us to a new place of adventure, a new paradise, but he can sometimes be irrational and radical, especially when he's participating with squares, and that's a tougher energy. So we have to be a little bit more mindful on how we're communicating during this time. Mercury in Leo is carrying the king's message. The sun is also in Leo, so it's very sure through Mercury's communication that he knows the agenda of the sun. And remember, Mercury is the messenger, but now it's with a square to Mars, so it's actually being very directive and impulsive and demanding, because its energy plays out that way. So we have to be extremely careful on how we are expressing ourselves. At the same time, Mercury also makes a square to the South Node, which is ruled by Mars. So this can be a triggering point for a lot of people, where you can either participate in an actual fight, if at the very least a verbal fight. So this is something that needs to be avoided, and it's gonna bring up old patterns. So this is a time that you can choose to evolve and say, no more am I going to be reacting this way anymore. I'm going to take the high road. I'm going to do things differently. So it does take some conscious awareness that you have to take into perspective, and then from there act in a different way. So there is some work to do, but it's definitely doable, because you do have the support of Jupiter forming a trine to the Leo planets. It's not exact. It looks like Jupiter is almost hitting that midpoint between the sun and Mercury. So it's more positively expressed between the sun and Mercury's archetype. So there is some saving grace that can assist us so we can express ourselves more easier. Now, Jupiter is making a square to Venus and the moon, and this is a separating square. Now, any squares to the benefics, I really do think they're beneficial. They're not as aggravating or hard to handle like the squares to, like, just say Saturn or Mars. So even Jupiter participating in this square just can mean that our emotions are a little bit more heightened and deeper. But in the energy of Aries, you're ready to move on, you're ready to break through. And in the energy and archetype of Cancer, it's much softer, but it's still a cardinal sign. It still starts summer, so it's very strong, has a lot of tenacity. So it's looking like the expression, the female quality, the feminine expression is very strong, because we have Lilith there, which is actually at 8 degrees squaring Jupiter, and we have Venus there at 10 degrees, and we have the moon at 11 degrees. So matters of women, matters of home, and also sexuality, sensuality, and empowerment and radical expression of the female archetype are going to be very strongly expressed during this period. So this whole transit starts off with a very strong feminine side being expressed, and it's also supported by the south node, and it's being supported by the north node, because it's making a sextile to the north node and a trine to the south node, and Venus is actually ruling the north node, and it's sextiling the ruler of the south node. So it's quite positive. Now, by traditional astrology, Mars rules Scorpio, but in modern astrology, Pluto rules Scorpio. I use both. I am a Hellenistic astrologer, so I tend to blend both, because I do believe that the outer planets bring a higher consciousness as they are being discovered. They influence our awareness, and we evolve as humanity. So I don't disregard them, but they move so slow that I tend to combine the meanings of both to get more of a comprehensive analysis. And eventually Venus does form in opposition to Pluto. So that is making an opposition to the south node ruler, but it stays in contact with the ancient, not the modern, the ancient ruler, which is Mars, and it's more positive. So it just looks like there's a slight mixed bag, but it's not as dramatic and detrimental, because there is some support from Mars. You'll also need to adjust for your time zone, because this is casted for Los Angeles, California. But in Los Angeles, the ascendant is ruled by Venus. It's a Libra sign. So it's talking about partnerships, negotiations, and contracts that are going to be on the forefront. So we're going to have a lot of themes around collaborating in this area, and Venus is high up in the 10th, so it's going to influence career, it's going to influence achievements, the work that we do, and it's through the 8th house where we find that destiny point of other people's money. So it's all about budgeting yourself, themes around security and money and property, and also other people's money, the partner's money. Jupiter's in the 7th house, so it's going to influence partnerships. So it looks like the support of Venus is benefiting couples or anything that's done in partnership, like business partnerships or contracts. But there is, again, that hiccup with Mercury making that square to Mars, and Mercury continues to make some aspects to the rest of the Taurus planets, and eventually ends his transit with a opposition to Saturn. So it's quite tough for the Mercury archetype, and this is going to be Gemini and Virgo, and also Leo, because Mercury is transiting your sign. So they're gonna feel this push very strongly. This is a great time to make sure that as we become overstimulated with the ideas and we want to take action without really thinking through, we take our time and do some breath work, because there's no air signs other than Saturn, and Saturn actually brings blockages wherever it's transiting. It is in a sign that it rules, but again, it's restructuring that sign, so it's not necessarily the healthiest air. So we do want to make sure that we're slowing down, oxygenating our blood, and this is also going to influence our logical mind and the way that we execute decisions. And you're going to have a lot of ideas. It's just going to be like bombarded of epiphanies and channeling messages and things like that. So make sure that you write this down. So carry a notebook and write it down, or maybe record it. But I would want you to use the energy of Mercury, which is the written word. So why not put it on pen and paper and then take a look at it later once this transit kind of slows down, because this is going to seed some stuff that's going to last for quite some time. It's a unique aspect. Aspects like this influence patterns for a very long time. The things that they create during this time could be something that is useful for a very long time. Like in 1866, something that happened during that year when Uranus, Mars, the North Node, and Mercury and Pluto and the Sun were actually in the sign of Taurus, we passed a law to start registering mail. That means that now we had to have a way of tracking the paper mail that was mailed out, so there can be a trail, which is a new technology back then. Obviously, that was about 200 years ago, almost 200 years ago, and a lot has changed from that point. But there's also some things that went on with the trains and railroads, and that's the usual transportation they used back then to transport mail. So as you can see, it was using Earth, because that's where we would that's how we ground the railroads, right? It's using that to transport a vehicle, which back then Mercury was involved as a conjunction, not a square, but we're going to see some of that Mercury stuff come up too with vehicles and travel and transportation, some pull through of that. And it then set a law that's still practiced now. We still use registered mail. So whatever is seeded during this time, you'll see that it continues on and it evolves and changes, but it's still influencing the processes greatly. Now, the next event in this series is the new moon in Leo. This happens on July 28th at 9:29 a.m. in Los Angeles time. And this is when we start seeing that repeated 18 degree. Now we have Uranus at 18, the North Node at 18, the South Node at 18, and now we have Mercury at 18. So during this new moon, we're now having Mercury squaring Uranus. It finished the square with Mars. So the aggression is still there because it's still in order, but it's separating. And now the ideas have picked up. The epiphanies have picked up. The third eye activation has picked up. And there's another influential aspect here, which is Venus. I'm not going to focus much on the Leo new moon because I did do a podcast and a YouTube video on that. I'm going to focus more on that degree so we can get a different side, a different perspective. Again, you can listen to that podcast and it's going to talk about different things. So it'll give you a different perspective of things. But Venus here is conjunct fixed star Sirius. And this is a big deal. There's a lot of reasons why. First, because anything conjuncting Sirius, the nation itself, 4th of July, which is what we consider the birth chart of the nation of USA, is conjunct this point. The sun is conjunct Sirius. So, and it was said that this chart was intentionally elected this way, and it appears so because it was done after hours. And yeah, and then there's also Antares, which is the Stargate portal, as the ascendant. So that would be another conversation for another time, but just so you guys could know, it's just scratching the surface on that conversation. Going back to Venus being conjunct this point, for the nation, this seems to be a good thing because we do have a sun at this point, and then Venus is conjuncting the sun. So it's bringing gifts to the sun. But individually or as a collective and an individual in that collective, Venus being conjunct with Sirius and Lilith is a big deal because she's ruling the North Node. And remember, the North Node and the South Node are destiny points. I also made a video about that, so if you guys want to check that out after this video so you can get more of the mythology of how the North and South Node work. But this is why this conjunction is such a big deal, because it's catapulting. The North Node shoots us towards the direction we're supposed to go and evolve, while the South Node is something we need to sort out. We have gifts there, so we don't leave it behind, but we sort it out so then we can connect the energies together. And that's how we evolve. That's how we complete our life's purpose. That's how we have more of a fulfilling life. So when you look at Venus conjunct Sirius, and she's ruling the North Node, and she's also forming a applying trine to the South Node, it's really bringing into perspective that we are getting some benevolent help. And from who? Who is it that we're getting this help from? Well, none other than Sirian Starseeds. So we're getting attunements right now to evolve our consciousness, to open our mind. They're actually re-engineering our genetic makeup right now. They're using light codes. And how do light codes work? Well, they're not comprehensible to the logical mind. So when we listen to light language or light codes, it doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't make sense to you. It's an unknown language. However, our bodies are universes within itself. I don't know if that came out right. What I'm trying to say is our body itself is a universe. And within our body, we have different living beings that also communicate, but we don't know their language. We have liver cells, we have brain cells, and they all communicate, right? We have white cells in the blood that go and assist, and we have red cells in our blood. So there's living beings that are working within our structure to create the vessel that we are now, which then harnesses a soul to exist in the 3D or third dimensional world that we live in now. Now, this is different in when we bring in other dimensions, but I'm just talking about Earth. And yes, when we bring star seeds, they exist in other dimensions and things like that, but they're able to influence us by programming some of these codes into our DNA so we can adjust to a new way of being, a new way of thinking, a new way of vibrating. And this is through the work of Dolores Cannon that she mentioned that we are energy, and as light codes are coming in, we are shifting our energy and we're vibrating at a different rate, which is also required. This is something that's the reason starseeds are here to assist Earth, is something that is being called onto so we can assist other beings that are living in the universe, as well as Earth is like a planet that everyone's cheering on to be successful, in addition to us causing very detrimental actions to the rest of the universe with the power that we so irresponsibly discovered, such as nuclear power, which is all connected to Uranus. Uranus also rules like bombs and things like that, and I'll cover that with that 18-degree mark. So those conversations are not off the table. There's things going on, especially because we have that square from Saturn in Aquarius within higher structures that we're totally not aware of. Things in regard to gun control, things in regard to military and militia, where there's things that are still being developed. And I'm telling you, there's technology that hasn't been released that is going to be released, and it's going to be very influential. There's some that been mentioned, like the metaverse. That's also technology that is being developed, and Mars being the engineer, they're probably going to have some breakthrough in the recent months, or in the months coming up from this conjunction. We're going to see some of those things be released, and it's because they perfected them during this time, or like they seeded the project during this time, and we still don't see the seed yet, right? We don't see the seedling. We don't see what's happening at this point because this is still the executing stage and we're going to see the results later. But we are going to see a lot of influence around this, and this is not just necessarily going to impact our day-to-day in regard to our activities that we do throughout the day or what we participate in socially, but it's also influencing on us on a cellular level. There's technology is something that uses frequency and hertz, and there's sound waves that we don't see, but they definitely impact us. We know that if we listen to music with hertz of a certain frequency, that influences our cells. So think of that. Sirian light codes are the same way. And right now, Sirians are stepping to the plate and they're bringing in their programming. Now, we had the Pleiadians do that when we had Mars go conjunct onto the Pleiadian sisters, and we also had Mercury actually conjunct this point about 3 times when it went retro. We also had Venus there, so the Pleiadians did bring in some codes as well, but now it's Sirius. Sirius is the one continuing with the programming, and this is also connected to the Lion's Gate portal, which is happening on August the 8th, and this is the rising of Sirius in the sky. Now at that point we will be able to see Sirius rising because Venus will not be conjunct Sirius, so it's not going to block the light of Sirius. But in this chart we do see Venus conjunct that exact point, and Venus is going to embody that energy of Sirius along with Lilith. So it's very strong feminine energy, and the ancients documented that any planet conjunct Sirius brings material wealth and security and also spirituality, but it does have a greedy side to it, and that's seen through the aspects and the connections. Now again, Venus is forming a applying sextile to Mars, which is the ruler of the south node, so it's still in a positive conversation. It's getting further away from the square to Jupiter, but now we see the 18-degree Mercury again, right? We've seen that. I think I mentioned it. So let's get into the 18 degrees and the signification of that. In this chart, we have Mars now conjuncting the North Node. Now, this day is going to be very eventful because we do have 2 conjunctions that are major in this cycle that happen on the same day. In other places around the world, it's going to be July 31st, but in Los Angeles, Mars conjunct Rahu happens on August 1st. So it's very strong in the first because Mars is archetype. That's naturally a house that Mars rules. So it has a lot of power in this house. However, we do see Saturn very strong. And now Saturn, it's at 22 degrees. So now we're seeing that first 22 degree pop up. We no longer have Mercury at 18. Mercury is at 24 degrees. And Venus is at 17 degrees. The moon is at 19 degrees. So let's just analyze this conjunction here that's happening with Mars and the North Node. Really close to the ascendant, and it's in a critical degree. It's a 29th degree, and it's a Taurus degree, which is then alchemizing to actually become a Gemini archetype. So it's not there yet. It's still the Taurus ascendant, but it is getting ready to change, and this is why we call it the critical degree. It can bring delays, seem like more of a crisis year, and also it seems to not make a decision fully informed. It's like blindfolded, so it does activate intuition. Now, this is going into Nikola's theory. He believes that every 29th degree of the zodiac signs is a psychic degree, and it's also associated with the energy of Leo. And this 29th degree, even though he did honor the Eneritic degree and he did take into that into account that information of indecisiveness, decision making, characteristics of crisis, the 29th degree is associated to the psychic degree because it has to learn to make decisions when it's not fully informed. So it needs to tap into the energetic body and start sensing things and seeing things from a different perspective to make an analysis. And that's why people that have the 29th degree in their chart, they tend to be excellent psychic or at least intuitives and empaths, because they tune into that energy and really embody it. So as you can see, this is another point in the chart that's talking about more of the crisis signature coming through. And when we look at the archetype of Uranus, Uranus brings shakes. He likes to change things up. He's like a lightning strike, and things happen very fast. The changes happen very fast, and he is not so fond of stability, but he is the ruler of a sign that requires fixed stability. So there is some sort of seek of stability. However, the archetype doesn't express that as well, because again, he's the man pouring water, and water is only controlled within a container. If you take the container away, the water goes everywhere. So it is a stable substance in a container, but as he pours it, again, bringing instability within a structure or a container that had stability. So again, this is why it desires stability. It's not really the greatest expression of stability. And then we go into Mars, which Mars is a planet that likes to participate in arguments and likes to conquer lands and claim its territory and use its muscles to attain resources or whatever it pleases. And when we combine both Mars and Uranus, the meaning here and the signature that I've seen and noticed, and this is one of the most prominent ones that I've seen, is that natives with Mars and Uranus conjunct, they tend to attract a lot of accidents. And it's not the accident itself, right? Again, the rule of three, looking at other points that are similar, that are activating this. But really what it is that they are so quick and they don't stop to process their actions that they get into little pickles. They get into situations where they could have avoided the accident, but they don't avoid them because they're not slowing down. And it's really hard for the Mars Uranus to slow down, because that's the freedom fighter. Mars is the fighter and Uranus is the new eccentric way of thinking and ideals. So it really has it's a rebel with a cause. It really has an agenda. It really has an expression, an idea to share with the world. And in the sign of Taurus, it's sharing its idea and influence in a more constrictive way that Uranus is used to, and also Mars is used to. So they might aggravate some things and make their presence known because it's a harder expression for them to tap into. Now, these two like to create shocks and disruption, and Uranus will make things happen really quickly. And at the same time, they're going to bring up frustration and arguments. And then because the North Node is there too, it's going to intensify these things because the North Node is just going to amplify whatever it touches. And this also can have changes in not just day-to-day activities, but we're going to see a lot of fluctuation in weather. We're going to see Mars very, very strong, and Mars rules fire. So we're going to see places where they're going to experience a lot of dryness. And then with that dryness, they're going to then unfortunately suffer from fires. We're also going to see that the weather is going to, in places we're going to have, I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a really big hurricane. I hope this hurricane doesn't get to any of the islands. There's a lot of them that stay just, near the oceans and things like that. But this is actually a combination of a hurricane because Uranus rules that, and then Mars brings the heat. Remember, most hurricanes happen in that area of the world where it's very hot and moist. So then this creates the buildup of heat and the clouds and all that weather starts stirring up, and then bam. And this is why it happens typically in the ocean, because that's where we have the most water, and then we have the sun beating on the ocean with heat, evaporating the water, so alchemizing it. So yeah, we're gonna see some things in regard to weather, probably some new ways of handling hurricane season that's going to be implemented by Saturn. That's because there's a square. Maybe they're being proactive, so it's like a worry. It's like something that's on their radar. But again, something that can happen during this thing, and it can happen quite quickly. Uranus is also in Taurus. It's also known to cause disruptions on earth, ground, because Taurus rules that. It's already disrupting the agriculture industry, so it can also bring in earthquakes and things like that in places where most likely hasn't suffered from an earthquake in a very, very long time, or it's in an unusual place to get an earthquake. That's another thing that brings that great unexpected energy of Uranus, like a shocking one. So yeah, we have to kind of be cautious. Now, during Mars and Uranus conjunctions, we also see a lot of authoritative influence, meaning we see that people can be quite explosive, and then at that point we're gonna have more militia or police or the military being enforced so they can regulate these things. And I also noticed that because of the prone to accidents, anything that is caused by Mars, like high blood pressure or burns, cuts, bruises, or anything that's inflamming the body, we'll see that there is going to be an increase in these injuries or illnesses that are going to cause visits to the hospital. And Mars also rules infections. So you have to be very, very careful that something that might have been just like a small cut doesn't get infected and turned into something worse like MRSA. So be very conscientious of whatever it is that you're doing when you're dealing or using weapons. And remember, we all have weapons in our house. We have knives in our kitchen. They could be used as weapons. Obviously, we don't use them as such because we're cutting our produce, right? We're preparing our meal. So we look at these items like a way that we're cutting into the things that we love and the things that nurture us, but it's still being cut and it's still ruled by Mars. So make sure that you don't clip yourself cutting. Make sure that you avoid a lot of the multitasking, because that's what happens typically when we endure those injuries. It's that we were kind of distracted and we're not really paying attention to what we're doing. So what is it that I advise you to do during this time? I advise you to start a meditation practice if you don't meditate yet. Now, I am going to be hosting a sun meditation challenge. The link to this is going to be in the description below. But because of the activation of Venus being conjunct Sirius, and also the energy itself that is calling us to channel more of the higher manifestation of Uranus conjunct Mars, to rewire our DNA, to re-engineer ourselves. This is why I decided to host this 30-day challenge. We're also going to go through the Lionsgate portal, meditating through that, and we finish when the sun ingresses the sign of Virgo. So if you're interested in doing this meditation, click that link below and enroll now. You don't have to do this meditation. You can take any other type of meditation, but really in times when we are dealing with a lot of changes, upheavals, and unpredictability, the best remedy is to be calm and centered, and meditation gives you that. You become zen as fuck. This is also a very unique program. There's nothing like this out there. This is the way I learned to meditate with the sun, and there's a lot of benefits with meditating with the sun. One of them being getting vitamin D, the other one increasing your vitality, your creativity, your endurance, and it activates your third eye. You're going to feel that third eye activated, which is super crucial during this time. And that is one of the main things that is being activated during the age of Aquarius, is now being able to see with our third eye. And a lot of people do this, especially very successful business people. You'll hear them say, "Oh, I had a feeling," or "I had a hunch," and they follow their hunch. That is their third eye. They might not refer to it how us in the woo-woo community do, like psychic abilities and empathic, but they still follow their intuition to make sound decisions. And you activating your third eye is exactly that. It's going to be so much fun. So I really hope to see you there. Now let's get to the next chart. Uranus conjunct Mars. This conjunction is also happening on the same day, August 1st, but at 4:35, and that's when Mars conjuncts Uranus. Now, Mars travels faster than Uranus, so that's why it was able to catch up. But now we see that we have Uranus at 18, Mars at 18, the South Node at 18, the North Node at 18, Venus at 18 degrees, and we also have Saturn at 22 degrees. So we previously had Mercury at 18 degrees, and it's no longer at 18 degrees, but Mercury here is at 26 degrees, which is a degree that Venus rules. And Mercury is the ruler of the 18 degree point. So again, everything that's happening with Mercury, all those squares, Mercury is playing a big part because he's the dispositor of this position. And now they're actually in mutual reception because Venus is at a degree that Mercury rules, and Mercury is at a degree that Venus rules. But the repeated 18 degree, again, a signature of this chart. Now, in this case, Mercury is very close to the top of the chart. It's in the 9th house, and it's conjunct the sun. It's getting ready to leave the sign of Leo, but it just finished the opposition that it had from Saturn. So it's ready to release, it's ready to move on, it's ready to enter its sign of rulership. It learned that it is not the king and he's okay with not being the king. He is okay with being in the element of Virgo, which is analyzing and perfecting systems. At this point in his transit, he's ready to move on. He's ready to leave all these squares and opposition aspects that he had to evolve. Again, remember, as Mercury was squaring the North and South Node, which are the destiny points, he was transiting in an area of the sky that we call the bends or the wobble. And this is also part of the eclipse cycle because planets here are going to cause a square, which is forcing us to take leadership in steps to evolve our consciousness, our soul, and take action. So they're quite important because without this push, sometimes we remain complacent. So Mercury did have to come in and expand our mind and make us see things from a different perspective. But it's energy that Mercury really does not enjoy. An opposition to Saturn is also very hindering to the mind and can cause a lot of fears and blockages. But ultimately, Mercury is friend to Saturn and Saturn is friend to Mercury. So when it's really well aspected in mundane astrology or electional charts or even in natal charts, we see that communication is much more practical. They're not people of many words, but when they do speak, it's very profound and to the point and very memorable. So they have a strong presence within their speech, and they exude a lot of maturity and authority. So it actually works quite well, but it's not as fast as other placements. So let's get into the 18 degree and what that means based on Nikola's theory. Here are some examples of what 18 degree represents. So the 18 degree is going to influence work and service industries. It's also going to influence the medical industry. And this is from the practitioners to the nurses, to the processes, to the prescription. So anything that has to do with executing the health plan, any people involved in the health plan are going to be influenced by this 18 degree. Health, your general health and your health regimen, illnesses or health issues that come about because of the care that you provide to your body are going to be associated with the 18th degree. So if you're like a health freak and you exercise, most of the time your body will be in great shape. But if you're not taking good care of it, then you're going to experience some illnesses or hiccups around your health. And it also has influence over any type of administration. This could be as little as bookkeeping to large governmental administration. It's like the worker bee energy. That's why it has an associations with bee and beehives, even though I also believe Pluto influences bees and beehives. But in general, it's that worker quality where it's executing the processes and they're all kind of flowing together and they're working together, like your coworkers all coming together to service customers, to provide a product out to the world, etc. It rules renting and renters. So anyone that's renting property and is a renter, like the relationship that you have with your landlord, that would be more like the Saturn energy. Virgo energy would be you and the renter renting from the landlord. And it also influences vets, animals, and pets. So any type of veterinarian or doctor of pets is going to be influenced by this 18 degree. And Nikola's research pointed to this degree having a lot of affinity to the energy of Virgo. And Virgo represents the working class. So as Virgo representing the working class, since we've seen this 18 degree over and over and over, it's going to influence evolvement and technologies and advancements within these industries, within the renting structures. Maybe there's laws that come about within work and how the schedules are, maybe a hybrid of working from home and or creating different shifts or being more friendly with the shifts, more of a way to manage and balance home life, because this is something that Uranus brings to the table, which is get away from the old processes that were no longer working. Now, in regard to these industries that are going to see the most impact, it's also something that we see that innovation is going to be invited in, because the energy of Uranus is to invent something that facilitates this, right? So we might see that new technologies are set in place so working from home is easier, or new technologies in the medical industry are set in place to detect certain diseases, etc., or to assist the nurses and the people in this industry or people in customer service to service the client. So we're going to see a lot of those changes, but not without people standing up for their rights, because Uranus is there, and that's the freedom fighter. And maybe this is being pushed. Maybe this is what people are saying, no, you need to improve these processes. We're frontliners, or we're always working, or it's not fair, unfair wages. You're going to see a lot of that. The worker bees are standing up. Now, one of the things that actually came to mind, and I'm just kind of saying it out there because I hope this doesn't really come true, but the technologies can affect the bees. And we know if bees are affected, then life itself ceases to exist in a matter, I think, of months. Check out the Netflix documentary. So yeah, I think maybe the new focus, because it is the North Node, and I'm hoping it's going to be more beneficial advancements, is that we are creating and developing technology that is not going to interfere with the natural frequencies that these animals use to communicate with each other and to go out there and pollinate our plants. And even ants are something that use this, and they're being interrupted based on the technology that we're developing. And yes, this technology is giving us amazing Wi-Fi speeds. And I mean, I use Wi-Fi in my business. I use a new phone for my business, but at the same time, I know there's consequences to that. So this 18 degree is calling that out. It's calling it to our awareness and attention. Now, based on Nikola's theory, he did appoint this degree to be a diabolical degree. And that doesn't mean if you have 18 degrees, you're like the evilest person ever. No. Again, repeated aspects. Remember, I pointed that out, 18, 18, 18, 18. So we need to see this over and over and over in order for it to be very influential. And this being an event chart, we're going to see some of this 18 degree influence show up. It's going to come true in some way, shape, form. Now, he called the 18th degree a diabolical degree. And the example that he gave during his teachings was the Hiroshima bombing charts and events charts involved with that. So the bomb Hiroshima was dropped on August 6th, 1945 at 8:16 with 40 seconds in Hiroshima, Japan. And this took about 200,000 lives. And the ascendant of the event chart was at 18 degrees of Virgo. And the moon and Saturn were also at 18 degrees, but in Cancer. And Robert Oppenheimer, I'm not really sure how to enunciate that, born on April 22nd, 1904 at 8 p.m. in New York, New York. He was the man who made the bomb. His ascendant was at 18 degrees of Scorpio, and the cusp of the 8th house, which is the house of death, and rebirth and transformation, was at the 18th degree of Gemini as well. And at the same time, during that time, the U.S. President Harry Truman, who was born on May 8th, 1884 at 4:17 p.m., he was the one who authorized the dropping of the bomb. His son, which is the decision maker, right? The royalty, the king or the president, was at 18 degrees of Taurus, which is actually triggering the same 18 degree point. And I am not surprised that his chart was something that the energy called on to look at, because whenever we have a very significant transit on important people that change history in our lives, we'll see their chart kind of resurface again, like their name resurface. So I'm not even surprised if some of the policies or administrations that were passed on or passed during that time are a focus or being brought up during this time. I haven't researched it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that comes up. And then we have Karl Marx, who who was born May 5th, 1818 at 1:49 a.m. in Germany. And he was the inventor or the so-called leader of communism, which was a social system that caused a lot of suffering. He had his ascendant at 18 degrees of Aquarius. And we also have Alfred Nobel, born October 21st, 1833 at 6:40 a.m. in Stockholm, Sweden, who actually was incredibly wealthy due to producing dynamite. And this is a component that is needed in weapons, which are ruled by Mars. And he had Uranus at 18 degrees of Aquarius. So as you can see, the 18th degree played a big part in connecting all these charts together. So it's like this is a synchronicity of the event. And this is why I wanted to focus on the 18th degree, because there was a lot of points that are going back to that degree mark. So there's something big that's happening right now that we are not fully aware of, hasn't fully showed its purpose or its agenda, and we're going to see that soon. And lastly, we're looking at the Saturn-Mars square, and this happens on August 7th. So Uranus sticks around at 18 degrees. The North Node starts leaving the 18th degree mark. It goes into 17. So the intensity starts to separate a little, but not too much, because as you can see now, we have Mars at 22 degrees forming a square to Saturn at 22 degrees, which is also another very influential degree when it comes down to violence and the harsher themes of life. So that's emphasized as well. But before I get into the 22 degree, I wanted to point out that this chart also has Venus forming an applying opposition to Pluto. Now, Venus makes an opposition to Pluto and has been making an opposition to Pluto every time she goes into the sign of Cancer, because Pluto's been in the sign of Capricorn since about 2008. So this is like the last times that Venus is going to be purging out information, purging out systems that no longer serve her, wirings, especially things connected to your early childhood or things that you hold very dear to your heart that you don't know are actually hurting you more than helping you. Like maybe the way that you were brought up to say certain things that don't encourage good self-esteem. And now during this time, Venus is bringing those themes up so you can purge them out. Now, on a mundane level, it can affect money. It has a big influence in money. Both Venus and Jupiter influence money. Jupiter is the power and Venus is the resources and money in general. Now, if we take in modern rulership, Pluto would be the ruler of Scorpio and Venus will be the ruler of Taurus. So it still has that same North Node influence. Now we're seeing that opposition play out. But in ancient rulership, Venus is still forming a sextile to Mars and forming a sextile that's separating to the North Node, a trine to the South Node. So it's quite neutralized because of the trine and sextile aspects to the North and South Node. And at this point, we do have Mercury now in Virgo at 5 degrees, and that's a Leo degree. And we have the sun in Leo at a Gemini degree. So they're also in mutual reception. They're helping each other out. But now Mercury is more in its element. The energy and the archetype of Gemini and Virgo are much more regulated and centered. So it's easier to handle. We have Jupiter ruling the moon, and it's actually forming a separating trine. So even though there's some harder aspects, and this is like really hard astrology, this period of time we already knew was going to bring some really hard astrology and events and doings. So now it's kind of after this, like settling down. And this is getting close to a full moon, as the full moon's going to happen when the moon goes into Aquarius, and it's a few days before that full moon. But the 22nd degree, according to Nikola, is influenced by Capricorn, and the 22nd degree brings delays and also a lot of obstacles. It's a degree that's also connected to having a lot of durability and longevity, but this can be either waiting for rewards, or it can be also in a state of depression and sadness or struggle. So it's a very challenging degree. It is connected to antiques, and it's kind of like the test of time, right? What survived the test of time, collectibles. It's connected with history and the past. It's very karmic. It's connected to our past patterns, poverty or shortage. It's also connected to rocks, dirt, mountains, and structures. It also is having a influence on the materials that are used to build structures. That's another Capricornian connection to that 22nd degree. So those are more the easier aspects or expressions of the 22nd degree, but he called this degree the assassin's degree. He called it the kill or be killed degree. I kind of feel this is an ultimatum degree. Again, if you only have 122 degree in your chart, that doesn't mean that this is going to happen to you. You might feel some restrictions in regard to certain things or developments in your life. Like in my chart, I do not have the 22nd degree, but I do have the 10 degree. My Jupiter is at 10 degrees, and it takes the energy of Capricorn, and Jupiter in Capricorn is in its fall. It's not a position of favor. So I did experience my early childhood that was very tough in regard to me feeling lucky. I did not feel lucky at that point. I feel lucky now, but it took a change in perspective, and I was depressed at one point, and I also had a very authoritative father who was debilitating and instilled a lot of fear and blockages. So I had to work through that, but it was through my hard work, my laurels, and me shifting my mindset that I was able to overcome that. So the 22nd degree is the ultimatum degree for me. It's either you're a victim or you become a hero. So I don't necessarily just see it for ultimatums of life or death, right? It's different things as well. But one of the examples that he gave was Japanese Emperor Hirohito, born April 29th, 1901 at 8:10 p.m. in Tokyo, Japan. He had the moon at the 22nd degree in Virgo, and it was squaring Uranus in Sagittarius and Pluto in Gemini. So it was receiving that T-square from those placements. And the moon represents the people in people's chart and also mundane's chart. This showed how the people were killed by a bomb, and that's the opposition, right? He has Uranus opposing this, which caused mass destruction, and that's the energy of Pluto. And also the dispositor of the moon, which is in his case, the moon was in Virgo, and that would be Mercury. Mercury rules Virgo, was also at 22 degrees in the sign of Aries. So as you can see, there has to be a lot of duplication of this energy, so you can then see that there's going to be some restriction, some ultimatum, some decision and hard structures. And really think of the energy of Saturn. His mythology, he was given an ultimatum by Earth or Gaia, and Gaia sought his help so he can stop his father from continuing to take advantage of her. And she wanted Saturn to kill him, and Saturn didn't do that. So he had to grow up really quickly and decide what it is that he was doing, and he castrated his father so he would no longer harm his mother, because he did know that his mother was being harmed by him, but then at the same time, that was his father. So Saturn brings this like bittersweet type of energy where you have to grow up quickly, you have to make a decision, and either decision is not necessarily the best. If you're interested in learning more about this degree theory, go ahead and follow me and also join my newsletter. I am going to be teaching this course soon in a matter of a few weeks, and I'm going to teach you what all the degrees signify, the rulers, and how to analyze the charts. And this is a great new astrological tool that can bring much more depth into your interpretation of events, natal charts, etc. As you can see, the energy of this transit is very intensified, and it is going to impact the electricity within us. We are magnetic, we are electric beings. So some of the remedies that you can use so you can calm your system down is breath work. I did talk about that. Also increasing our meditation or starting a meditation practice, practicing mindfulness, making a crystal protection sachet. The crystals that I'm using are shungite, citrine, bumblebee, jasper, and a garnet. You can use whatever crystals you wish to use, but remember that it's best to use a crystal that is going to provide protection and also steady vitality, so steady energy, any crystals that are connected to the sun. Make sure you're grounding daily, and you're also connecting to the element of earth, and this would be by either walking barefoot on dirt or grass, or actually working in the garden and connecting to plants, because that's all Taurus energy. I can just envision this as being one of the remedies that would be recommended by Nikola, because the 18th degree is connected to Virgo, and it's in the sign of Taurus. So that would be like servicing Virgo, your yard or garden, Taurus. And the other remedy would be tuning forks, and this is using the energy of Uranus, and then also tapping into the qualities of Virgo, which would be alternative methods of healing, body massaging, which can be done either by you scheduling an appointment to get a massage, or maybe having like a partner's massage, and just moving the energy in the muscles, because the electric system will be stimulated by the movement, and we'll get, things flowing within the body and also the energetic system. Also Reiki, I didn't put that in here, but Reiki or any type of energetic attunement will be great. Vitality, meditation. So this is meditation that's going to energize more than relax. And salt baths, I would actually try to do a salt bath daily during this period, if at the very least every other day. And then salt spray. So just boil water, put plenty of salt in it, and it should be salty to taste. It's not going to be for you to drink, but you're going to put it in a spray bottle once the water is cool, and you spray yourself, and at the same time you envision all this negativity and just energy that's kind of dragging you down, disappearing from your aura, so you can be cleansed and revitalized. And of course, journaling daily with all those immense amount of ideas that you're getting during this transit. You want to write them down to visit them later. Things that can really help are stretching, and yoga is notorious for that. We go into poses that we're stretching, we're holding these poses. Qigong is another one, and EFT tapping. So they're all using the body, using the system, the meridian system, to get the energy flowing. So these are some of the remedies that you guys can use to channel this energy more accurately and more purposefully in your life. Lastly, you want to recite the Ho'oponopono prayer. During my podcast, I talked about this, and this is a prayer of sending love and also apologizing and taking responsibility for your part, and asking for forgiveness for whatever it is that you need to be forgiven. Even if you did nothing wrong, this is just forgiveness in the way that you are taking accountability, and then thank you for showing your gratitude. Thank you so much for being here, and remember, always stay curious and look up to the stars and always wonder what's in your stars. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment below, and share this channel or podcast with other people. Your energetic exchange is truly appreciated. And I will be going live on Mondays on IG for AstroTalks, Astro Astrologer, where I give astrology information and interact with the public. And this is a segment that I co-host with my friend Kathy from the Healing Gem. She's the crystal expert, and she gives recommendations on what gems and crystals to use based on the astrological weather. So I am so happy to connect with you. And again, happy North Node Uranus Mars conjunction, and may this be very productive and influential in your life. Thank you so much. Love and light, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.